November 9th, 2022, 2000 hours Moscow time. Russian Defense Minister Sergei Shoigu sits across from General Sergei Surovikin, newly appointed commander of Russian forces in Ukraine. The meeting is televised, carefully staged. Shoigu asks Surovikin for his assessment of Kherson. Surovikin responds with prepared statement. The situation in Kherson is difficult. Continued defense of the city would lead to loss of personnel and equipment. I propose withdrawal to defensive positions on the eastern bank of Dnipro River. Shoigu nods. Approves. The decision is made. Russia will abandon Kherson, the only regional capital captured during the entire invasion. We'll evacuate 30,000 troops across the Dnipro River. We'll cede the entire western bank. We'll retreat from positions held for 8 months. The withdrawal will begin immediately. This announcement shocks, because 3 weeks earlier, on October 19th, Russian authorities declared martial law in Kherson, began mandatory evacuation of civilians, announced Kherson would be defended to the last. Russian military bloggers predicted bloody urban warfare. Ukrainian breakthrough would be stopped. The city would hold. Now suddenly, complete reversal, withdrawal, retreat, abandonment. But whether this is tactical withdrawal to better positions or strategic defeat, acknowledging Russian forces can't hold western Dnipro Bank, or something darker involving Russian forces preparing retreat for weeks while publicly claiming defense, determines what Kherson withdrawal actually means for the war. This is Military Report, where we analyze the battles that change wars. Kherson City, regional capital, population 280,000 pre-war, 2022. Location, western bank of Dnipro River, approximately 20 kilometers from river mouth emptying into Black Sea. Strategic significance, controls access to Crimea from north. Dominates lower Dnipro crossings. Provides staging area for operations toward Mykolaiv and Odessa. Symbolically, only regional capital Russia captured during invasion. Loss would be enormous propaganda defeat. Russian capture of Kherson, February 24th to March 2nd, 2022. Russian forces advancing from Crimea. Ukrainian defense initially effective, but Russian forces bypass strongpoints. Threaten encirclement. Ukrainian command withdraws military forces March 2nd to avoid being cut off. Russian forces enter city. Relatively little fighting within city itself. Occupation begins. Russia claims Kherson will be part of Russia forever. Permanent occupation. No retreat. This claim will age poorly. March to August 2022. Russian occupation. Russian forces fortify Western Bank. Build defensive positions. Deploy troops, eventually 25,000 to 30,000. Use Kherson as logistics hub for Western Dnipro operations. Launch attacks toward Mykolaiv, fail. Defend against Ukrainian counterattacks, succeed initially. Hold referendum Sham, declaring Kherson part of Russia, September 30th. Annex territory legally according to Russian law. Putin declares, these territories are Russia forever. 1 month later, Russia will abandon Kherson. Ukrainian counteroffensive begins, late August 2022. Ukraine announces Kherson offensive. HIMARS strikes systematically destroy Dnipro bridges, Antonovsky Bridge, main road bridge, Antonovsky Railway Bridge, Nova Kakhovka Dam Road crossing. All 3 crossings rendered unusable or heavily damaged by early September. Russian forces on Western Bank are now cut off from easy resupply. Can only use pontoon bridges and ferries under Ukrainian artillery fire. Logistics become nightmare. September to October 2022. Ukrainian forces push Russian forces back gradually. Not breakthrough. Grinding attritional warfare. Ukraine advances 5 to 20 kilometers in different sectors. Liberates villages. Pushes toward Kherson City. Russian forces defend but are slowly squeezed. The Western Bank pocket shrinks. Russian command faces. Continue defending with forces that are increasingly difficult to supply. or withdraw while withdrawal is still possible. The decision is delayed, 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 until it's nearly too late. 3 questions. We'll answer them at the end. Was Kherson withdrawal a rational military decision to preserve forces, or was it forced evacuation after Russian position became untenable due to Ukrainian pressure and logistics collapse? Could Russia have held Kherson if they'd committed more resources and accepted higher casualties, or was the Western Bank position fundamentally indefensible after bridges were destroyed? And the critical one, does Kherson withdrawal represent just territorial loss, or does it expose fatal Russian strategic weakness, inability to hold territory across major river obstacles when logistics are contested? Russian official narrative claims planned tactical withdrawal, saving personnel and equipment for more important operations. Smart decision by competent commander. No defeat, just rational redeployment. All carefully managed withdrawal with minimal losses. Ukrainian narrative celebrates Russian forces driven out by Ukrainian counteroffensive. Military victory forcing enemy retreat. Liberation of major city. Strategic defeat for Russia. Proof Ukrainian forces can retake occupied territory. Western analysts debate. Some accept Russian claim of tactical withdrawal. Others see forced evacuation disguised as planned retreat. Evidence supports multiple interpretations. But one fact is clear: Russia is abandoning only regional capital captured. This is defeat by any standard. Only question is how much of a defeat. Stay with me. What happens in the weeks before withdrawal announcement reveals Russia was preparing retreat while publicly claiming they'd defend to the last. The deception matters. October 2022. The evacuation that wasn't called evacuation. October 19th. Russian occupation authorities announce mandatory civilian evacuation from Kherson. Claim: Ukrainian shelling threatens civilians. Humanitarian evacuation for safety. Reality: preparing city for urban warfare or abandonment. Need civilians gone. The evacuation is chaotic. Forced. Many resist. Russian forces compel evacuation at gunpoint in some cases. October 22nd, pro-Russian authorities evacuate government offices. Museums are looted, art collections stolen. Administrative infrastructure dismantled. Everything valuable removed. This pattern is not consistent with defending city to the last. This is preparation for abandonment. October 25th to 31st, Russian forces construct defensive lines on eastern bank of Dnipro. Fortify positions. Pre-position supplies. Move artillery to eastern bank. Build pontoon bridges for evacuation routes. All while officially claiming Western Bank will be held. The contradiction is obvious. If you're defending Western Bank, why build defenses on Eastern Bank? If you're holding Kherson, why evacuate everything? Russian military bloggers notice discrepancy. Begin questioning official narrative. Some get censored. Others self-censor. But undercurrent of doubt spreads. Is Russia really defending Kherson? Or preparing retreat while lying about it? November 1st to 8th. Ukrainian forces increase pressure. Push closer to Kherson city outskirts. Russian defensive line contracts. More villages abandoned. Ukrainian artillery can now range most of Western Bank pocket. Russian logistics become impossible. Pontoon bridges destroyed repeatedly. Ferries sunk. Helicopter resupply, expensive, limited capacity. Russian forces on Western Bank are slowly strangling. November 9th announcement, withdrawal. Presented as sudden decision. But evidence shows planning began weeks earlier. The decision was made long ago. The announcement is just making public what was already happening. The deception served purpose: buy time for evacuation without appearing weak, maintain morale, prevent panic, but also deceived Russian population and military about situation reality. This matters because if withdrawal was truly sudden military necessity, suggests Ukrainian pressure forced it. If withdrawal was long-planned deception, suggests Russian command knew position was untenable weeks before admitting it. Either interpretation is damning. First shows Ukrainian military success. Second shows Russian strategic failure and deception. Withdrawal execution, November 10th to 11th, 2022. Russian claims, orderly withdrawal. All personnel and equipment evacuated successfully. 0 casualties. Perfect operation. 30,000 troops, thousands of vehicles, all evacuated across river in 48 hours under Ukrainian fire with no losses. This claim is absurd. Logistically impossible. Provably false. Reality. Chaotic evacuation. Russian forces scramble to cross river before Ukrainian forces arrive. Some equipment is evacuated, much is destroyed or abandoned. Ammunition dumps blown up, massive explosions visible on satellite imagery. Some troops cross via remaining pontoon bridges. Some via ferries. Some swim. Some are left behind. Ukrainian artillery strikes crossing points, causing casualties. Equipment losses documented by visual evidence. 100+ armored vehicles abandoned. Artillery pieces destroyed or left behind. Trucks. Supplies. Ammunition. The river crossings are bottleneck. Can't evacuate everything. Must choose. Troops are priority. Heavy equipment is abandoned. This is standard retreat pattern. Russia claims otherwise, but evidence contradicts. November 11th, morning. Last Russian forces cross Dnipro. Bridges and ferries are destroyed behind them. Russian forces now entirely on eastern bank. Western bank is abandoned. Ukrainian forces enter Kherson city. Population celebrates. Ukrainian flag raised. Liberation is complete. Russia has lost only regional capital captured. The strategic defeat is total. This is military report. Real tactics. Real consequences. Why couldn't Russia hold Kherson? Factor 1. Geography. Dnipro River is 2 to 3 kilometers wide at Kherson. Major obstacle. All logistics must cross river. Bridges are vulnerable to HIMARS. Once bridges destroyed, supplying 30,000 troops becomes nearly impossible. Pontoon bridges are temporary, vulnerable, insufficient capacity. Geography favors defender on eastern bank, not western bank. Factor 2. Ukrainian HIMARS, systematic destruction of bridges. Precision strikes. Russian forces cannot repair faster than Ukraine can destroy. The technological advantage, Ukrainian HIMARS range and accuracy versus Russian repair capability, is decisive. Russia cannot maintain logistics across river under these conditions. Factor 3. Force ratio, 30,000 Russian troops holding salient west of river. Ukraine can concentrate superior forces against isolated pocket. The geometry of Kherson salient is terrible for defense. 3 sides exposed, 1 side blocked by river. Any Ukrainian breakthrough threatens encirclement. The position is operationally unsound. Factor 4. Attrition. Ukrainian artillery systematically degrades Russian positions. HIMARS hits command posts. M777 hits artillery. Soviet guns hit infantry positions. Constant pressure. Daily casualties. Equipment losses. Morale degradation. Russian forces are ground down slowly. Replacement is difficult across river. The pocket is dying. Factor 5. Time. Every day Russia holds western bank, loses more troops and equipment to attrition. Every day Ukrainian forces grow stronger, more western weapons, more training. Every day Russian logistics get harder. Time is against Russia. Must either withdraw or accept catastrophic losses. Command chooses withdrawal. Factor 6. Strategic value versus cost. Holding Kherson costs Russia 30,000 troops who can't be used elsewhere. Requires constant logistics effort. Achieves what strategically? Kherson doesn't threaten Odessa anymore. Ukraine too strong. Doesn't protect Crimea effectively, too far north. Doesn't enable offensive operations. Just holds territory at enormous cost. Cost-benefit is terrible. Could Russia have held Kherson longer? Yes, at catastrophic cost. If Russia committed to urban warfare in Kherson city, Ukrainian forces would have to fight building by building. Casualties would be high on both sides. Russia might hold for weeks or months. But eventually, encirclement, surrender, or annihilation. Like Mariupol, but reversed. The outcome is certain. Only question is how many die first. Russian command assessed. Not worth it. Better to withdraw intact forces. Fight from better positions on eastern bank. Preserve army for future operations. Lose territory. Keep soldiers. This is rational military decision. But admission of weakness. Admission that Russia cannot hold territory Ukraine contests with Western support. Strategic implications of withdrawal. Implication 1. Territorial loss. Entire western Dnipro bank lost. Kherson Oblast split. Russia now controls only eastern bank. Significant territorial setback. All gains from early war in this region erased. Implication 2. Symbolic defeat. Only regional capital captured is lost. Massive propaganda blow. Russia annexed Kherson September 30th. Claimed eternal Russian territory. 6 weeks later, abandoned. The humiliation is profound. Implication 3. Strategic position weakened. Dnipro River becomes defensive line. Russia is now defending, not attacking. No offensive capability toward Mykolaiv or Odessa. Crimea is more exposed, though still defensible. The strategic map shifts entirely in Ukraine's favor in south. Implication 4. Morale impact. Russian military morale plummets. Losing is one thing. Retreating from eternal Russian territory is another. Ukrainian morale soars. Western morale supporting Ukraine increases. The psychological impact cascades. Implication 5. Resource freed. 30,000 Russian troops evacuated can be redeployed elsewhere. But they're demoralized, degraded, need reconstitution. Not immediate combat power. Ukraine also frees forces from Kherson offensive. Can redeploy to other fronts. Both sides gain tactical flexibility, but Ukraine gains strategically. Implication 6. Pattern established. Russia retreats when position becomes untenable. First Kyiv, March to April. Now Kherson, November. Pattern suggests Russian forces cannot hold positions Ukraine seriously contests with Western support. This is strategic weakness with long-term implications. Which factor forced Russian withdrawal? A. Ukrainian military pressure. B. Logistics impossibility. C. Strategic cost-benefit calculation. The answer reveals whether Russia still had choice. Keep watching. Costs and consequences of withdrawal. Russian casualties during Kherson campaign. Estimates. Killed 2,000 to 5,000. Wounded 5,000 to 15,000. Captured 100 to 500. Deserted unknown, possibly hundreds. Total 7,000 to 20,000 casualties. Equipment lost 200 to 400 armored vehicles. 50 to 100 artillery pieces. Enormous supplies. Ukrainian casualties. Estimates less than Russian. Killed 1,000 to 3,000. Wounded 3,000 to 10,000. Equipment significant but less than Russian. Total 4,000 to 13,000 casualties. The casualty exchange ratio favors Ukraine approximately 2 to 1. This is typical for defender against attacker. But Ukrainian forces are attacking in Kherson, yet still achieve favorable ratio. This indicates Russian position was so bad that even defending, they took disproportionate casualties. The Western Bank was death trap. Long-term consequences. Consequence 1. Winter line stabilizes. Dnipro River becomes main defensive line in south. Massive natural obstacle. Easy to defend. Hard to attack across. War in southern sector becomes static. Front line doesn't move significantly for months. This favors Russia, gets to consolidate, but also Ukraine, Russia can advance. Consequence 2. Focus shifts elsewhere. With south stabilized, both sides focus on Donbass. Russian offensive toward Bakhmut intensifies. Ukrainian forces prepare for future offensives elsewhere. Kherson becomes quiet sector. Active fighting moves east. Consequence 3. Crimea more isolated. With western Dnipro bank lost, Russian land corridor to Crimea becomes more vulnerable. Not immediately threatened, but strategically exposed. Ukraine can potentially threaten land bridge in future offensives. This changes Russian defensive calculus. Consequence 4. Western support continues. Ukrainian victory at Kherson proves Western weapons work. Proves Ukraine can win. Encourages continued and increased support. More HIMARS. More artillery. More tanks eventually. The success creates positive feedback loop. Consequence 5. Russian strategic crisis. After Kherson, Russia faces can't achieve offensive objectives. Can't hold territories Ukraine seriously contests. Can't replace losses at current rate indefinitely. Must either mobilize more, already started September, or accept frozen conflict. No good options. Let's answer the 3 questions now. Was Kherson withdrawal rational military decision or forced evacuation? Both. And the distinction matters less than propaganda claims. Russian position was untenable due to geography, river obstacle. Logistics, bridges destroyed. Ukrainian pressure, constant attrition. Time, situation worsening daily. In this context, withdrawal was rational military decision to preserve forces before catastrophic loss. But position became untenable due to Russian strategic failures. Failed to protect bridges. Failed to maintain logistics. Failed to counter Ukrainian HIMARS. Failed to anticipate Ukrainian offensive. Failed to withdraw earlier when cost would be lower. The rational decision to withdraw was necessitated by irrational strategic failures that created the crisis. So, withdrawal was simultaneously rational response to impossible position and admission of defeat. Not contradictory. Russian command made least bad choice among all bad options created by their own failures. This is still defeat. Just managed defeat instead of catastrophic defeat. Could Russia have held Kherson with more resources? Theoretically, yes. Practically, no. Holding Kherson long-term requires functional river crossings. Ukraine will destroy. Sufficient logistics. Impossible without crossings. Air superiority. Russia lacks. Willingness to accept urban warfare casualties. Politically difficult. Ability to sustain 30,000-plus troop garrison indefinitely. Russia lacks reserves. Even if Russia committed 50,000 troops instead of 30,000, massive air defense protecting bridges, hundreds of pontoon bridges, urban warfare. The result is delayed defeat by weeks or months, increase casualties dramatically, still eventually lose when logistics collapse or encirclement occurs. The Dnipro River geography is fundamentally unfavorable. Ukrainian HIMARS makes supplying Western Bank impossible. More resources means more resources lost, not different outcome. Only way Russia holds Kherson is if Ukraine lacks HIMARS. Didn't happen. Ukraine doesn't contest Kherson. Didn't happen. Russia has air superiority. Doesn't have. Russia willing to level city and accept tens of thousands of casualties. Politically impossible. Since none of these conditions obtained, Kherson was lost regardless of resources committed. The position was fundamentally indefensible after bridges fell. Withdrawal was inevitable. Only question was timing and cost. Russia chose withdrawal in November. Alternative was catastrophic loss in December or January. Not victory. Just slower defeat at higher cost. And the critical question, does Kherson withdrawal expose fatal Russian strategic weakness? Yes. Fatal is strong word. But weakness is severe. Kherson proves Russia cannot hold territory across major river obstacles when Ukraine contests it with Western weapons. This is huge strategic limitation. Implications: Dnipro River becomes permanent front line in south. Russia cannot cross west. Ukraine cannot cross east, for now. This is de facto partition. Russia cannot achieve pre-war goals, control entire Kherson Oblast, threaten Odessa, secure land corridor to Transnistria. Ukraine cannot immediately liberate eastern Dnipro Bank, but has time to prepare. Broader pattern. Russian forces retreat when logistics fail. Kyiv, Kherson. Ukrainian pressure intensifies. Kharkiv, Kherson. Cost exceeds benefit everywhere. This pattern suggests Russian military can hold territories with good logistics against limited Ukrainian pressure, where cost is acceptable, but cannot hold against Ukrainian forces with Western weapons, when logistics are contested, where geography favors Ukraine. This is not fatal to Russian war effort immediately. Russia still holds 18% of Ukraine, including Crimea. But it's strategically limiting. Russia cannot achieve maximalist goals, cannot occupy all Ukraine, cannot even hold all claimed annexed territories, must settle for defensive war, holding core territories, hoping Ukraine/West tire. This is admission that military victory is impossible. Only hope is political/diplomatic settlement or Western support collapse. Kherson withdrawal is the moment Russian war aims shift from victory to survival, from conquest to defense, from strategic offense to strategic defense. This is defeat, even if not final defeat. Direction of war has irreversibly shifted against Russia. The quiz answer: which factor forced Russian withdrawal? B. Logistics impossibility. 50 to 60% of causation. Ukrainian military pressure mattered, 30%. Strategic cost-benefit mattered, 20%. But fundamental driver was, cannot sustain 30,000 troops across river when all bridges destroyed and river crossings are under constant artillery fire. The mathematics of logistics make position impossible. Each soldier needs food, water, ammunition, medical supplies. 30,000 soldiers need hundreds of tons daily. Must cross 2 to 3 kilometers wide river, under Ukrainian observation and fire, using pontoon bridges, limited capacity, easily destroyed, or ferries, slow, vulnerable, or helicopters, expensive, very limited capacity. Result: impossible to sustain. Ammunition runs low. Food becomes scarce. Medical evacuation is difficult. Reinforcements can't arrive. The pocket dies slowly. Withdrawal is only alternative to annihilation or surrender. If Russia had maintained bridges, could supply adequately, could reinforce, could hold longer. But bridges are destroyed. Russia cannot protect them from HIMARS. Therefore, logistics collapse. Therefore, withdrawal. Everything else flows from logistics failure. This is Military Report. Subscribe to Military Report, because preparation defeats improvisation. November 9 to 11, 2022. Kherson withdrawal summary. Territory lost. Entire western Dnipro Bank, 3,000 plus square kilometers. Kherson City, regional capital. Russian forces evacuated. 30,000 troops officially. Actually 25,000 to 28,000. Some casualties/missing. Russian equipment lost. 200 to 400 armored vehicles, 50 to 100 artillery, massive supplies, abandoned Russian casualties, 7,000 to 20,000 during entire Kherson campaign. Strategic result: massive Russian defeat, loss of only regional capital. Captured Ukrainian forces liberate Kherson City, dozens of towns and villages. Entire Western Bank, Ukrainian casualties, 4,000 to 13,000 during campaign, less than Russian. Strategic result: major victory proving Ukrainian forces can retake occupied territories. The retreat Russia claimed was planned tactical withdrawal. The victory Ukraine earned through systematic campaign. The bridges destroyed by HIMARS. The logistics that collapsed. The position that became untenable. And the defeat Russia couldn't hide despite propaganda. Lessons for militaries worldwide. River crossings are decisive vulnerabilities in modern warfare. Precision fires make sustaining forces across rivers nearly impossible. Geography and logistics constrain operations more than tactics. Defending the wrong position costs more than tactical withdrawal. Urban warfare should be avoided unless absolutely necessary. Modern wars are won by logistics and fires as much as maneuver. Was Kherson withdrawal Russia's second greatest strategic defeat after Kyiv? Strong case. Lost only regional capital captured. Abandoned territories claimed as eternal Russia. Exposed inability to hold contested ground. Freed Ukrainian forces for other operations. Proved Western weapons decisive. Boosted Ukrainian morale. Damaged Russian morale. Created strategic momentum for Ukraine. What would you have done differently? As Russia, never try to hold Western Dnipro Bank after bridges destroyed. Withdraw in September when cost lower. Establish defensive line on river immediately. Accept territorial loss early instead of bleeding forces slowly. As Ukraine, same campaign but faster. More aggressive exploitation. Cut off more Russian forces during retreat. The window was larger than utilized. The city Russia held for 8 months. The bridges Ukraine destroyed in August. The position that became impossible in September. The retreat Russia prepared in October. The announcement that came November 9th. And the evacuation that ended November 11th with Russian forces fleeing across the Dnipro, abandoning the only regional capital they ever captured. This is Military Report. Subscribe, because we break down the battles the textbooks will study for decades. 30,000 Russian troops, 200+ days of occupation, billions of rubles spent fortifying, 0 strategic benefit achieved, total withdrawal in 48 hours, the only regional capital captured, lost, the eternal Russian territory abandoned. And the lesson written in fire and steel across the Dnipro: Russia cannot hold what Ukraine contests when West provides the weapons. Kherson, where Russian dreams of conquering southern Ukraine died, where the Dnipro became the graveyard of Russian offensive ambitions, where retreat was called withdrawal and defeat was called redeployment, but where the result was the same: Russia lost, Ukraine won, and the strategic map shifted permanently. November 11th, 2022. The day Ukrainian flag returned to Kherson. The day Russian forces evacuated across the Dnipro. The day the only regional capital Russia captured became the first regional capital Ukraine liberated. And the day Russian strategic defeat became undeniable. Stay vigilant.